Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever felt the sting of silence from someone who once craved your presence like air? The truth is, desire isn't enough. Craving you doesn't mean they're ready for you. In fact, the louder their silence, the deeper their fear. And while you're overthinking every moment, they're drowning in emotions they don't have the courage to act on. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why they never call, even when they desperately want to. Just because someone feels a deep emotional pull toward you doesn't mean they are ready to offer something meaningful or stable. Craving and commitment are not the same thing. They operate on entirely different frequencies. One is instinctive, impulsive, born from a moment of desire. The other is intentional, thoughtful, and requires maturity. People often confuse the two because they both can feel intense, even overwhelming. But the reality is, craving can exist in a vacuum without any action behind it. It's like standing in the rain and wishing for shelter, but never taking a step to find it. The feeling is real, but it lacks the courage to be followed by movement. What matters is not how strongly someone feels something, but what they choose to do about it. Words and longing mean very little without action to support them. There are people who will feel your absence deeply, yet still make no move to bridge the distance. They sit with their longing like it's a secret, hidden away even from themselves. This isn't because they don't care, it's because they are stuck in a pattern of passivity or fear. They might replay memories, miss conversations, even scroll through your photos, but they remain still. That's the trap of craving without growth. There's a comfort in fantasizing about connection without risking vulnerability. But fantasizing is safe, and true connection isn't. It asks some thing of you. It demands presence, honesty, and sometimes uncomfortable effort. Craving can live in a dream, commitment lives in action, and you deserve the kind of energy that doesn't hide behind excuses. It's easy to confuse emotional intensity with readiness. Someone can feel all the emotions in the world, but if they're not emotionally equipped, they'll keep those emotions caged inside. That doesn't make those feelings any less real, but it does make them incomplete. When you hold space for someone in your heart, it's natural to imagine that they'd want to hold that same space for you. But craving can exist even in people who are incapable of giving anything back. Not because they're bad people, but because they haven't done the work. They haven't faced their own patterns. They haven't built the emotional muscles required for showing up. Feeling is passive, doing is active. And the gap between the two is where many connections fall apart before they even begin. What you need to understand is that someone not reaching out doesn't always mean you weren't special to them. It often means they're not in a place where they know how to handle something real. People crave what they can't hold, especially when it forces them to grow. And the truth is, real love will always challenge someone to rise higher. It's not just about attraction or connection, it's about responsibility, consistency, and growth. Those are heavy things for someone who still avoids their own reflection. And so they choose silence, distance, or distractions. Not because you didn't matter, but because they're still battling the part of them that fears being seen. Craving you might be easy. Becoming someone who can meet you fully, that's the part they're avoiding. The most powerful thing you can do is to not take it personally. Their silence, their hesitation, their inability to reach out. It's not a measurement of your worth. It's a reflection of their current limitations. And if you make it about you, you begin to shrink to fit their brokenness. You begin to question your glow because someone else couldn't stand in the light. But it's never been your job to fix, convince, or awaken someone. That's a journey they must take on their own. And waiting for them to choose you is like pausing your own story for a chapter that may never get written. You deserve love that speaks, love that acts, love that doesn't flinch when it sees you. When someone can't step forward, it's not your role to step back and make yourself smaller just to accommodate their fear. Too often people bend, shrink, and wait in silence, hoping that craving will turn into clarity. But craving without courage is just emotional noise. It sounds like something, but it says nothing. If someone truly values what they feel, they will find the strength to act. And if they don't, it's not your burden to carry. You are not responsible for someone else's emotional paralysis. You are only responsible for your standards, your peace, and your emotional well-being. That is where your power lives. Not in hoping they come around, but in choosing not to wait. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to let go of the hope that someone will finally become ready. Hope, when misused, can become a trap that keeps you stuck in loops of maybe and what if. But your life is not meant to revolve around potential, it's meant to unfold in truth. And the truth is, people who are truly ready will never keep you guessing. They'll show up in ways that are clear, consistent, and courageous. They won't hide behind silence or let fear do the talking. They'll take the feelings they have and translate them into action. Anything less is emotional limbo, and that's not where you belong. The real test isn't how deeply someone feels, it's how they respond to those feelings. Do they allow those emotions to move them, to challenge them, to lead them toward growth and action? Or do they retreat, ignore, and numb it all away? You don't want someone who only feels, you want someone who builds with what they feel, someone who doesn't just dream of love, but who does the work to create it. Craving you in the dark is not the same as holding your hand in the light. Don't let emotional intensity blind you to emotional immaturity. What lasts is what's built, not just what's felt. You are not the problem when someone can't step up. You're not too much, too deep, or too hard to love. You're just too real for someone still living in emotional shadows. Craving is often about comfort and fantasy, but connection is about risk and reality. And many people are not yet brave enough to cross that line, so they sit with their feelings and do nothing. But your life is too precious to be spent waiting on someone else's fears. Be the one who lives with courage, who loves with clarity, and who never lets someone's silence your spirit. There is someone out there who won't need to lose you to recognize your value, who won't confuse desire with action, who won't keep their feelings locked away out of fear. Someone who understands that love is not about craving in silence. It's about showing up, speaking up, and standing up for what matters. And the more you honor your own standards, the faster you'll attract the kind of love that meets you with full presence. Don't settle for longing. Don't settle for maybes. Don't settle for someone who feels but doesn't act. You are not meant to be someone's emotional escape. You are meant to be someone's chosen reality. When someone doesn't reach out, it's easy to turn inward and ask, what did I do wrong? That's human. We often personalize the silence of others, assuming it's a reflection of something we lacked or failed to be. But the truth is, silence says far more about where someone is in their journey than about your value. Emotional unavailability, fear of intimacy, or unresolved wounds can cause a person to freeze, not because you weren't enough, but because they aren't ready. Your worth isn't diminished just because someone doesn't acknowledge it. It remains intact, constant, untouchable. When someone can't show up, it doesn't mean you were forgettable. It means their readiness is out of sync with your presence. And that's not your fault, nor your burden to carry. We all carry stories inside us. Some are told, others are tucked away under layers of defense. When someone chooses distance over communication, it often stems from their internal story, not your presence in theirs. Maybe they've been hurt before, or maybe they haven't yet learned how to handle closeness. Either way, their silence isn't a measure of your value. It's a signal of their struggle. You don't need to fix it, interpret it, or take it personally. You're allowed to acknowledge their silence while refusing to absorb it as your truth. There's a world of difference between being ignored and being unworthy. Never confuse the two. The absence of a response doesn't mean you failed. It means something within them is still unhealed. People show up in relationships based on their capacity, not their feelings. Someone can feel deeply for you and still not be capable of stepping into emotional presence. That capacity is shaped by maturity, experience, and self-awareness. If someone lacks those, they might choose avoidance over honesty. You may want to understand their silence to decode the meaning behind the space they've created. But often the only explanation is this: they are not equipped. And that's not a commentary on your lovability, it's a mirror of their internal state. You are not the cause of someone else's emotional limitations. You are simply the one who exposed them by showing up fully. And that is something to be proud of, not ashamed of. The mistake we make is trying to earn communication, thinking if we do more or be more, we'll finally be worthy of their words. But love isn't a test to pass, and your voice isn't a currency to be traded for someone else's attention. You deserve connection that doesn't keep you waiting in silence. You deserve clarity that isn't held hostage by fear. If someone cannot express themselves, that is not a reflection of your value, it's a reflection of their limitations. And limitations aren't overcome by your sacrifice. They are only conquered through a willingness to grow. Stop trying to prove your worth to people who are still unsure of their own. You are not the one who needs to change to deserve communication. Silence can feel like rejection, but rejection isn't always about being unwanted. Sometimes it's about someone else not being ready to hold what's real. People reject what challenges them, what reflects their fears, what forces them to grow. And real connection does all of that. It requires vulnerability, honesty, and emotional responsibility. Those aren't light asks, they're heavy lifts for those who have never learned to carry the weight of intimacy. So instead of showing up, they vanish. Instead of engaging, they avoid. But let their silence speak only of their fears, not your flaws. You are not the reason someone chooses to disappear. You are just the mirror that revealed what they're not ready to face. When someone can't meet you in the space of real communication, don't lower your standards to keep the illusion alive. Don't silence your own voice in hopes of being heard by someone unwilling to listen. You don't have to beg for basic emotional presence, and you don't have to water yourself down just to be tolerable to someone emotionally dehydrated. You deserve conversations that flow with honesty, not walls built out of silence. When someone doesn't reach out, it's not your job to reach deeper into your own doubts. It's your chance to reach higher into your self-respect. You're not hard to love. You're just asking for the kind of love that doesn't hide behind closed lips. In moments of confusion, when silence feels louder than any spoken word, return to yourself. Ground yourself in the truth of your value. Not everyone has the tools to handle depth. Some people live in shallow waters because it feels safer, even if it's lonely. But you weren't made for surface-level connection. You were made for deep oceans, for honest conversations, for heart-centered presence. Don't let the quiet convince you you're invisible. Sometimes your light is so bright it overwhelms those who haven't yet found their own. That's not your fault. That's not your responsibility. You are not too much. You are just right for someone brave enough to stay. It's tempting to chase clarity when we don't get closure, to send that last message, to seek answers, to fill the silence with explanation. But the need for closure often arises from the belief that their silence has something to say about us. It doesn't. Their silence is not a final judgment. It's just an unfinished sentence left hanging in a story that wasn't meant to be completed by you. Closure isn't always something we receive. It's something we decide. And you can choose to close a chapter without waiting for someone else to sign the last page. You can reclaim your peace without needing their words to make it real. You have to remember, not everyone who crosses your path is meant to stay. Some are meant to show you what you don't need. Others teach you what silence looks like so you can better recognize what communication should feel like. Their inability to contact you when it matters doesn't define you. It defines where they are in their life. And it gives you the information you need to protect your energy. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to blame them. But you also don't have to wait. Love yourself enough to walk away from uncertainty. Choose yourself in the moments when others don't. In the end, communication is never about perfection, it's about effort. And the absence of that effort reveals everything you need to know. You don't need elaborate explanations or poetic apologies to know you deserve better. You just need to look at the reality of what is being shown to you. When someone doesn't step up, you get to step forward without them. Into peace, into wholeness, into relationships where you never have to wonder. You are not the echo of someone's indecision. You are the voice of your own clarity. and you are allowed to choose joy even when someone else chooses silence. You teach others how to treat you by the way you treat yourself. Every decision you make in how you respond, how you engage, and how you hold your boundaries sends a message. If someone pulls away and you chase after them, you silently teach them that distance will always bring your attention. If someone gives you inconsistency and you still remain available, you show them that they don't need to give more to keep you. That's not because you're weak, it's because you care. But care must never come at the cost of self-respect. You deserve to be seen without having to shout for visibility. You deserve to be prioritized without proving your worth. Love should never be a transaction for validation. It should be a mirror that reflects your value clearly. There is immense power in how you respond to silence. When you choose not to react, not to beg, not to lower your standards, you protect your peace. Reacting to breadcrumbs with enthusiasm only encourages more breadcrumbs. But when you no longer respond to mixed signals, you shift the dynamic. Suddenly, attention must be earned. Suddenly, access to you becomes a privilege, not a guarantee. That is not playing hard to get. That is honoring your emotional worth. Let your silence speak where words would only dilute your dignity. Let your absence be louder than your pleas. You do not need to keep proving yourself where your presence is already a gift. When someone pulls away, it's natural to want to close the gap, to reach out, to explain yourself, to fix whatever feels broken. But in doing that, you often send the message that your standards are flexible, that your self-worth bends when someone else withdraws. And once someone learns that, they stop respecting the effort they should be making. It becomes too easy for them to disappear, knowing you'll do the emotional heavy lifting. You're not supposed to carry both sides of the connection. You are not responsible for their silence. You are responsible for showing yourself the same love and reassurance you seek from others. Let your energy be a mirror for what you expect, nothing less. You don't have to chase love to prove you deserve it. You don't have to keep reaching out in hopes of being chosen. If someone's absence becomes a pattern, your response must become a boundary. If you continue to show up where you are only partially seen, you begin to normalize emotional scarcity. And once scarcity feels like love, you start to accept pain as part of connection. But love doesn't need to hurt to be real. It doesn't need to keep you guessing to keep your interest. You teach with every yes and every no, with every time you stay, and every time you walk away. Teach others that your heart is not a playground for emotional immaturity. Every time you choose to stay silent in the face of neglect, you reinforce that behavior as acceptable. Every time you excuse poor communication, you teach that inconsistency is enough, and it's not. You deserve presence, not just attention. Effort, not just emotion. Clarity, not just curiosity. People don't rise to meet you when you lower yourself to keep them. They rise when they realize they can't access you without growth. But that can only happen when you stop making exceptions. When you stop rewarding absence with availability. Let people earn the right to be in your life by the way they show up, not by the way you fill in their gaps. Emotional standards are not punishments, they are guides. Boundaries are not barriers, they are invitations for deeper respect. When you communicate with silence instead of reaction, you aren't being passive, you are being powerful. You're saying, I do not beg to be seen. You're declaring that access to your emotional world requires care, not just craving. You're showing that your love is not handed out to those who don't know what to do with it. Every moment you choose not to chase is a moment you remind yourself of your worth. And the right people will never need you to abandon your value to get their attention. You are allowed to be unavailable to chaos. You are allowed to take your energy back from inconsistency. You are allowed to say, if you don't show up, you don't get to stay. That is not harsh, that is honest. That is not pride, that is power. And when people feel your absence instead of your constant forgiveness, they are forced to reflect. They are forced to choose growth or lose access. That's not manipulation, it's maturity. You cannot change someone's behavior by accommodating it. You change the entire tone of a connection by changing how you respond. And that shift begins when you realize that silence is sometimes stronger than 1,000 words. It's not about playing games or using silence as a weapon. It's about understanding your influence. When you remove yourself from the dynamic, you shift the pattern. When you stop rewarding bad behavior, you create space for better behavior. And if better doesn't come, you have clarity. You know that you didn't lose something real. You just stopped pretending it was. There's nothing noble about waiting around for someone to get it right. Your time is sacred. Your heart is valuable, and your energy deserves to be met, not taken for granted. Let your actions reflect your standards, even when your emotions want to settle for less. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is nothing, to resist the urge to reach out, to stay still when everything inside you wants to bridge the distance. But that stillness is where your power grows. That pause is where self-respect takes root, not because you're punishing anyone, but because you're protecting yourself. When you choose not to chase, you shift from needing to be chosen to choosing yourself. And in that choice, everything changes. You stop operating from fear and start moving from confidence. You stop proving your worth and start honoring it. That is how you teach others what you expect, by showing up for yourself first. You don't need to say anything to show what you deserve. Your energy will speak for you. Your absence will echo louder than any explanation, and your boundaries will teach better than any plea for attention ever could. Love yourself enough to stop proving. Stand still enough to be seen for who you are, not for how much you give. Those who are ready will rise. Those who aren't will fade. And either way, you will win, because you didn't abandon yourself trying to hold on to someone else. You taught them with silence, you led with self-worth, and you never lost what was truly meant for you. Desire alone is not enough to sustain a connection. Craving someone and showing up for them are not the same thing. Many people feel the intensity of longing but lack the emotional discipline to act on it in a healthy way. Wanting someone doesn't automatically translate into commitment, communication, or consistency. What we often mistake for love is just the ache of emotional attachment mixed with personal fear. There's a vast difference between wanting connection and being ready for it. Readiness means being able to step into vulnerability, to hold space for someone else, to communicate even when it's uncomfortable. Without that readiness, even the strongest desire becomes paralyzed. Attraction might be instant, but connection is always a choice followed by action. Without action, desire is just noise. The idea that feelings should always result in action is one of the biggest emotional myths we cling to. People assume that if someone truly cares, they'll reach out, they'll fight for you, they'll be consistent. But emotional paralysis is real. Many carry wounds that freeze them when it's time to show up. Past pain, fear of rejection, low self-worth. These internal battles are invisible but powerful. Just because someone feels deeply doesn't mean they can express it. Just because the craving is there doesn't mean they have the capacity to handle the intimacy that comes with it. This is where so many people get confused. They think, if the feelings are strong, why the silence? But strength of emotion doesn't always come with strength of maturity. We live in a culture obsessed with the idea that love should be dramatic and chaotic, that distance means mystery, and silence makes the heart grow fonder. But silence doesn't always mean someone is holding space for you. It often means they're avoiding their own discomfort. It's easy to want someone in theory. It's harder to show up when it requires vulnerability, responsibility, and emotional effort. Craving can coexist with cowardice. Someone might lie awake at night thinking about what they lost, but still lack the courage to pick up the phone. Not because they don't care, but because caring isn't the same as readiness, and readiness is the foundation for healthy connection. You can't build a relationship on craving alone. Craving is like hunger. It's intense, but if it's not fed with nourishment, it fades into weakness. Emotional hunger without follow-through creates anxiety, not intimacy. You deserve someone who shows up not only when it's easy, but when it's hard. Someone who doesn't just miss you, but is willing to meet you. Longing is romanticized, but it's not sustainable. Relationships aren't built on missing. It's built on being there, on follow-through, on uncomfortable conversations, on presence. So when someone doesn't act on their feelings, don't over-romanticize the silence. It may feel meaningful, but it often means they are overwhelmed, not inspired. It's not uncommon for people to retreat when they're feeling intensely. That retreat can come from emotional immaturity or simply not knowing how to handle connection. Sometimes the craving is so overwhelming it triggers fear of losing control, fear of being rejected, fear of losing independence, fear of messing it all up. That fear can stop them dead in their tracks, so they ghost, they pause, they stall, and you're left wondering what went wrong. But what went wrong wasn't you, it was their inability to process their feelings in a constructive way. Feeling something isn't impressive. Acting on it in love, in courage, in maturity, that's where real strength lives. Waiting for someone to be ready when they are stuck in craving but not moving can drain your spirit. You start to internalize their inaction, you start to doubt yourself, but this is not about your worth, it's about their internal war. You cannot make someone act on their desire. You cannot be the motivation they refuse to find within themselves. Love is a shared dance, not a solo performance. You can't keep spinning while they stay frozen. And you shouldn't. Your energy is too valuable to be poured into empty space. Sometimes the craving is real, but the courage is missing. And no matter how real the emotion, it's never your job to make someone brave. Emotional courage is often the missing piece in people who crave but don't act. It's the bridge between wanting and choosing. Many can fantasize about love, but few will commit to the vulnerability it takes to live it. That vulnerability includes showing up even when you're afraid. It means initiating, not retreating. It means facing uncertainty, not avoiding it. Without this, desire fizzles into frustration. You are not someone's practice ground. You are not the placeholder for someone who doesn't yet know how to show up. Longing without presence is a form of emotional negligence. You need consistency, not just chemistry. You need reality, not just the echo of someone's feelings in the dark. Stop romanticizing emotional absence as depth. Stop mistaking silence for a sign that something profound is happening. Sometimes silence is just avoidance. Sometimes craving is just discomfort. When someone cares but doesn't act, they are not a mystery. You are simply waiting on a version of them that does not yet exist. Your life is not a waiting room for someone else's evolution. You're allowed to walk away from people who won't walk toward you. That's not cold. That's clear. Love must be practiced, not just felt. Without practice, it dies in the echo chamber of internal fear. And you deserve a love that's alive in action. You can't heal someone into readiness. You can't love someone into courage. You can hold space, yes, but if they refuse to step into it, you are holding space for a ghost. Ghosts haunt, they don't build, so don't let the memory of what could have been chain you to what never was. Craving is not commitment.